back to Confidence Culture, Diverse Narratives, and the Silent Superpower. I'm your host, Galia, and today with me, we've got my cousin, Ariella. Hi, Ariella.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Sun is shining, couldn't be better.
Where can we find you now? Where are you these days in the world?
I'm currently in Johannesburg in South Africa, my hometown.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? Are you originally from Joburg? Like, what are you up to in life? What do you do for a living? That vibe.
Sure, yeah. So, my name is Ari, and I'm 29 years old, going on 30. It's a big one this year. I am originally from Johannesburg, South Africa, as you can hear from my very deep accent. I lived abroad for many, many years in my early 20s. And then the last couple of years, I've actually been semi-nomadic, so traveling a lot while working at the same time. My work is like in consulting and data analysis. And at the moment, I am taking a break from everything, which is why I'm home. Just kind of recalibrating a bunch of things and having a great summer.
Incredible. That sounds so lovely. So this podcast is all about confidence and asking people from around the world with different experiences about their personal takes on what confidence is, how it manifests for them in their life. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on confidence? What do you think that confidence is?
It's an amazing question. And I think that we could talk about it for hours. But when you first asked me to come on the podcast, I was thinking, yeah, what do I think about confidence? And I immediately went to my personal experience with confidence. But then I started thinking if I were to put it in a way that was sort of not personal and just sort of a little soundbite. I was thinking a lot about how people say fake it till you make it, right? Like, I don't know if you've had people say that on your podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
well, I think that podcast, but yeah, in general, I've heard it. Yeah.
In general, yeah, people say that about confidence so much. Like, you just have to fake it till you make it. But I have a little, and I agree with it. I just have a little like second take on it, which is that you can only fake it till you make it if you are really truly being authentic within yourself. Because otherwise you're just faking it. If you find out who you truly are and what you truly love to do and what sets your soul on fire, and you're not yet confident in that, then absolutely fake that till you make that. But if you don't know who that is and you don't know what your passions are, and you're just kind of being confident for the sake of being confident, then you're being confident in a skin that's not your own, then you really are just faking it. And as a second thing to that, I will also say that you can also fake it till you make it. If you don't know what you're doing and you're still finding your voice and you're still finding your authenticity, you don't have to absolutely know who that is to be confident. You can be confident in your journey as well.
That's really cool. I like that. So taking that definition on board, would you consider yourself a confident person?
I think I would, yes. I mean, I think I have to say that, right?
People have said on the podcast that they're not. People have like really spoken about it. So
really? Okay. When I told some friends that I was doing this, they were like, "Oh, 100% you're the right person," and I was like, "Okay." Like, I wouldn't have like immediately gone to that, but since you asked me and since I told some friends and they sort of reaffirmed it, so I guess I would describe myself as a confident person. I think I'm like half introvert, half extrovert, and I think sometimes that also gets confused with confidence. Like somebody who really can be out there, right? Like you can be a confident introvert for sure, but I'm an extroverted introvert, in that I can go out and make conversation with almost anyone, but am definitely more comfortable by myself.
Yeah, we've been speaking about a lot on the podcast, like with different guests, about how some people think that confidence is going up to people and being super friendly and making friends and being loud and like putting yourself out there. Some other guests have said that no, it's like sitting there with yourself, being okay with being alone, being okay with like being with your own thoughts, being okay with your own mind. And that's like true confidence, when you're like okay with yourself. So sounds like you've got a little bit of both going on, which is fun for you.
Absolutely. I totally agree that that confidence is not always being the outgoing person. I think often sometimes the outgoing people are those that lack confidence and they have to sort of put themselves out there for validation. And that's okay as long as you're aware of it. But it's not necessarily, the definition of what it means to be confident.
What difference does confidence make to your life?
Oh, everything. I think it's such a cornerstone for everything that I have done or I'm going to do, even though I don't know what that is just yet. Just knowing that you always have yourself as your backup and that if you're making decisions from a good place, good things will happen. Maybe not in exactly the way that you expected them to happen, but having yourself as your backup, that's kind of like, it's the best. It's the best thing to have in your back pocket, that if something goes wrong, you're just like, you just whisper to your inside voice and be like, hey, are we good? Are we okay? It's such a superpower.
That reminds me of a previous conversation we had about travel, because as you mentioned, you kind of are a global nomad. Is that the right term?
Yeah. No labels, but yeah, like a nomadic.
What kind of drives you to travel? Because not everybody likes traveling. So what do you like about it, and what drives you to travel?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know what initially drove me to travel, other than it just seemed obvious. But once I got into it, I loved it. I think the freedom of moving around a lot and not being attached to a single place was a big part of it. And just discovering so many new places, you almost become like addicted to that, and like finding new places and meeting new people and discovering so many new cultures and things like that, which is always fun. And also a big part for me was the fact that I was only traveling in like a carry-on, and I didn't have so much stuff with me. And I was never that person. I always had like a ton of clothes, and I always like needed all my stuff. And while I was traveling, it becomes really hard to lug all your luggage around with you, and it becomes so much easier to just have a couple of things with you. And that's also very freeing, in like not having to have so much stuff, and just not having, almost like taking away some choices. Like you don't have the choice of what to wear because you just have what you have with you, and that's quite liberating. Yeah. And then I think also being like single and being in your 20s and having truthfully a lot of extra time and spare time, there's so much that you can do when you're traveling. So many activities and so many things to learn, and classes to take, cooking classes and dancing classes and language classes. So I could think of no better way to spend my free time, than to do that kind of stuff.
It's really fun. Can you give us a little bit of a taste of kind of what it's like a day as a remote worker in like a foreign country? What does that look like for you?
Wow, I think every day looks so different, especially when I think also work kind of gives you a bit of structure, because there are some times where you absolutely have to be online, and you do have to work in order to travel. So yeah, I think forming your day around work sometimes works for me during the weekday. And if you are traveling with people or meet people, just finding a new cafe to work from, or wherever your preferred workspace is. I personally love working from cafes. So just finding a new cafe to work from, heading out there, maybe finding a cool workout class or an exercise class or something to do in the evening or in the morning. And then also just finding cool cultural activities to do in the evening, and inviting friends to come with you, or having friends invite you to come to things. There are definitely some days where it's where you just need to just take it easy and take a good chill and just do the bare minimum, which is just work and go home and sleep and do your thing. The weekends are really like the fun part, because that's where you get to go on hikes and go take a long class, like a surf class or something like that. For me, that I had never done before, and that was something that I tried to do on the weekends when I was traveling. I think that also kind of fits into our confidence conversation, which is trying new things, and that you can be bad at things and it's absolutely fine. And things you can build skills over time, but some things you'll never necessarily be able to do. For example, I will never be able, I don't think, to do samba like a true Brazilian. My feet just don't move that fast. but it's fun to try, and it's almost fun to fail at that, as long as you're having a great time and you're with good people.
So you've described a lot of positives about traveling, how it's super fun, all exciting things. So have there been difficulties? Have there been any challenges and things that kind of didn't go as you would have necessarily wanted?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest challenge for me came when I was fully solo traveling, and there weren't that many opportunities to meet people. I mean, there were opportunities, but you really have to put yourself out there. So sometimes when you're traveling, the meeting people and the building of the community comes really easy. It just kind of falls into your lap. And sometimes you really have to make the effort to go out and to meet people. And sometimes when you're not feeling that, then you have to make a choice of either to really put yourself out there and like make a big effort, because as I think everyone will feel, sometimes it takes more effort than other times. And so for me, there were times where I really was not in the mood to fully put myself out there. And I was like, I wish I just had my friends with me. I just wish that I had my people, that I didn't have to like hustle to go out with people. So I think that might have been the biggest challenge. And then I wouldn't describe this as a challenge per se, but definitely times where I didn't know where to go next, or didn't know how to get to a certain place, or didn't know where to even stay when I got to a certain place. And it was those moments where you really have to rely on the people around you and rely on your network and reach out for help. Even if it's something small, like reaching out to somebody you once met at a networking event and say, hey, I remember that you were at this place. Where do you recommend staying? So reaching out to your network and your friends and asking for advice and asking for help, that I think was a bit not a challenge, but let's say foreign to me. I'm typically a very independent person, so asking people for advice and asking people for help is not it doesn't come super easy to me, but something that I really had to learn to do if I wanted to get the best out of my experiences.
Yeah, asking for help can be really hard for a lot of people. Would you give advice to our listeners on where to find kind of the courage to ask for help? Because sometimes it does require courage.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you just got to do it. It does also help when people are also just asking you for help sometimes, because it goes both ways. So sometimes, this actually might be a good strategy, is if you see that somebody is in need of something that you're able to give, and reaching out to them before they ask you, and say, hey, I saw you're in this place. Can I recommend this? Or, hey, I saw that you're struggling with this. Can I help you? And reaching out first as the giver, and then maybe you'll be more open to receiving it. And then also by way of that, being more open to asking for it. Because then it just becomes an exchange and it becomes so natural. So getting used to it is a big deal. And I think maybe you could even start with asking for help with things that you don't really need help with. And then you're not coming from a place of let's say like desperation, or that you really need it, but rather coming from a place of, I'm just curious if you had any thoughts.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much. So you mentioned earlier that you would describe yourself as a confident person. Have there ever been any times in your life or areas in life where you struggled with your confidence?
Yes, definitely. There have been times in my life where I have struggled with my confidence, particularly in my teenage years, where I just was so focused on my weight and how I looked and how I compared to the other girls in my class. I think that's a pretty relatable story for most girls. But at that point, I think all I was trying to do was control that by working out more, being more in control of my diet, getting nicer clothes, more clothes, that kind of thing. And then it wasn't until, I guess, my mid-20s where I started to realize, and I think it's because I heard something online, or something definitely triggered me, but it was like an outside source that basically said, think about how much time you're devoting to the way you look and trying to change your body and trying to change your image, and imagine if you put all of that time and energy into something else. And that really hit me, because I think I was spending at that point so much time browsing online for clothes, browsing new diets, spending so much time thinking about controlling my food and working out, and not for the pleasure of working out, rather like to try and, lose weight and change the way that my body looked. And at that moment, I think I really realized that that energy could be better spent doing something else or thinking about other things, or would just free up so much time in my life. And that was the turning point, and that was the point that I decided to, it didn't happen overnight, but it was the point that I decided to change the way that I looked at health and body image and working out and things like that. And it was a very, very slow process. I will say it took me maybe 2.5 years, and it's still a process. It's still something that you don't ever complete that. But I mean, maybe there are people that have, but I'm certainly not there. But it definitely is not so much. I know that it's not so much part of my thought process at the moment. And so the first thing that I did was unfollow all of the Instagram influencers that were promoting super skinniness and some fad diets and things like that. And I started to follow a lot of girls that were doing positive body image stuff, just to change my mindset that is the reality for most girls, that we don't look a certain way, and to love the way that we look regardless of what we look like and our genetics and things like that. And so there are so many amazing influencers out there that are promoting that. So highly recommend doing that if you're looking for a first step. And then I think I just started to take on board a lot of the things that they were saying. So things like working out because you love your body, not because you hate your body, and just transforming the whole way that we have been taught to think about food and exercise and clothing and our bodies and all that kind of thing, and just transforming it into something positive so that ultimately it doesn't take over your life and your thought processes and every decision that you make. So yeah, I think that was like the peak of the time that I felt not confident within myself, but it was also the point that I was able to transform all of that energy into something positive. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, it's been amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed our chat. And thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in, and we'll speak soon. Thanks so much.